Have you ever thought about your hidden influences? You know, the influences that we don't really discuss, but we all subtly know are there. You know, we talk about having parents or not having parents, or being raised by grandparents, or being raised by an uncle or foster family, whatever it may be. But how many of us are aware of the programming that is going on a daily basis due to our environment we were raised in? You know, sometimes these limiting beliefs, sometimes these identities, these ways of thinking, ways of being, sometimes are installed as programs when we were young, right? How many of us have personalities that would be entirely different had our growing environment been different? I think that's everyone. But for the most part, it's also people that have grown up in a household in which being themselves really wasn't allowed. You know, being conformed into society was praised. Why don't you act like your brother? Why don't you be more like your sister? Why don't you be more like your cousin Johnny? Whatever it is, we have these comparisons, and oftentimes our parents will say things that seem innocuous, right? That seem like, oh, that doesn't matter. But the version of you that experienced it happening, no matter the age, right, internalize that in some way, shape, or form. And depending on your mindset at that time, you may or may not have begun a program based upon what you were experiencing in the reality, right? So if the first time your parent says, why don't you be more like your sibling? You may be like, okay, whatever. That's the sibling, right? But the 30th time your parent says this, well, now you're solidifying these traumatic events for yourself. You're solidifying that, well, my parent likes my sibling better. And my parent liking my sibling better, that means that I'm not worthy of that love. I'm not worthy of unconditional love, if that's even a thing for me, right? You start installing your own limiting beliefs. Even if they necessarily didn't come from your parents, they came from your parents by virtue of the happenings that you experienced together. And it's when we really start to come into our own and we set down our limiting beliefs and we identify their origin place. We identify the origins of our stories and our traumas. And all of a sudden, the family unit, the environment in which we grew up in, becomes a very big, significant factor. You know, we're oftentimes thinking about, oh, it needs to be something big. It needs to be something truly traumatic to affect us. And the thing is that's absolutely not true. You know, one person's idea of big and traumatic may be completely different than somebody else's. The difference here is that how you internalize whatever happening was for you, right? Is it bullies at school or bullies at home? Some people are saying, well, I can't be bullied at school because I'm always bullied at home. So I have a thick skin. But here's the thing. Is that really you? It's you now. It's you now having, gone through and experienced and alchemized that aspect of your life into this version of yourself. But is that truly you? Meaning, if your family had been completely different, your upbringing completely different, would that still be you? That's what I consider to be you wholly. Is the version of you that would be the same irregardless of the factors of your environment when you were growing up. We all have them. There are aspects of ourselves that no matter where you grew up are there. Now, the environment around us may slowly breed that out of us, make it so that we see that as being not beneficial to our survival in this concrete jungles that most of us find ourselves in. Big public schools that seek to really sow seeds of division amongst people. You know, the more and more we see these cliques of different groups of people, we may acknowledge all the different people, but we also subtly acknowledge that there's a difference that we don't seem to be to overcome. It's just something that naturally exists in all the human environments, no matter where you go. There are cliques, there are people that just fit together and they exclude other people and whatever it is. But that limiting belief of something that you experienced while growing up is something very plausible to take into your adulthood as being fact, as being the truth, right? Something that will need to be kind of reinforced by the external reality. So if we're carrying a belief that, men ain't shit or women are all hoes, if we're carrying this belief, then guess what's going to happen, right? We've said it before, but the reality will present to you instances and happenings that confirm what it is that we're consistently partaking in, right? So if we're consistently partaking in the energy that, a certain gender isn't anything and a certain gender is one thing, that's the energy we're exuding. And so the universe, being all smart, all knowledgeable, will be like, well, I guess since you're putting all your energy into thinking and feeling about this one type of thing, then that's what we'll give you more of, right? But if we instead focus on not just what we want, but who we are, right? Are you truly, truly, truly down to your bones a good person? Do you do the quote unquote right thing when no one's looking? And further to that, do you do it without question? Or do you pat yourself on the back? Oh, I did this. I'm a good person. Or is it purely an unconscious behavior? Something you do just because your soul felt called to do it in that moment, in that particular way, without witnesses. You are just being you, not filtered through societal norms, right? Do you give a homeless person money just because, right? Do you give someone money because they ask for it, because they need it, or because you want to feel good about yourself? This is a fundamental question because I've met many people on all sides. Some people give because, wow, they're generous, they have a little extra, and why not, right? And other people, they look at it as a potential opportunity if they give money. Like, how can this help me? And others more so will not do it because, well, it doesn't serve them at all. It doesn't serve them to help another person to stand out in that way. I think I'm going to cut all of that about the homeless piece. I don't know where I was going with that. This idea that we are able to find relationships based upon who we are, I find it full of fallacy, full of lies. Because most of us don't really know ourselves. And so we go and we get in a relationship, and while it's perfectly reasonable to find yourself within a relationship, I would argue that it's harder. I would argue that it's harder because in the manner of a real relationship, you're supposed to come to the table, or supposed to is the wrong word, but you're meant to come to the table in a way in which you are whole, you are complete. And in this wholeness and completeness of yourself, you're able to give all of yourself to the other person. Now, this doesn't mean bending over backwards, but what it means is, for whatever reason or whatever need is required in that moment, you're able to give all of yourself. You're able to give all of yourself in your work. But then when work is finished, when it's time to go home, you're able to give all of yourself to your partner, to your partnership, right? When you think about relationship between a man and a woman, especially in today's age where we're in situations where you might be in a dual income household, right? In that particular scenario, you will probably need to exercise different levels of belief. You know, everybody does everything, and not just because of a specific gender role, but because that's what you would do for yourself, right? You would clean your own house, right? You would cook for yourself, right? You would clean up after yourself, right? All of these things that you would do for yourself because you love yourself, and because you connect with yourself, and because you admire yourself, and you believe in yourself, and truly you know yourself. You would do these things with or without your partner. And so if you would do these things with or without your partner, then it only goes to say that we should also expect and do the same thing with our partners. You know, when we take one aspect and devote all our time into work, that's great. That's great. But we will also neglect another piece of our life. And so in this world where money may or may not exist in the future the way it stands now, we have to really consider what's important to us. You know, a lot of people say, well, just get your money right and everything will be okay. What do we do before money? The society that tells us that we need money for everything, and for the most part you do, because it's the way we've allowed society to crumble. But what would you be doing if it was before money? Right? Before money, you had to be truly yourself. Even if that didn't seem pretty, even if that wouldn't get you any extra brownie points, you had to be yourself because that's all that there was. And today it's the same thing.